RJG CoPilot, how to set a mold alarm. To make the alarm settings a little larger, while keeping the three other cards in view, you can select and hold the middle circle, and drag it to the left. We can see in the alarm settings view, that no mold alarms are currently active, and there are two active machine alarms, fill time, and cycle time. The job overview card shows the machine in green, indicating that the job is running fine within those set limits. Since we currently do not have any mold alarms active, the job overview card shows the mold in gray. For our example, we have decided to add an alarm around the peak cavity pressure, near the gates in the mold. We can begin to do this by selecting the Add button at the bottom of the alarm settings screen. From the Choose Alarms page, on the left side of the screen, we can see the types of alarms that can be added: machine alarms, mold alarms, and composite mold alarms. For our example, since we want to create an alarm relating to peak cavity pressure within the mold, we will choose mold alarms. With mold alarms selected, we can see a list of variable types that can be chosen. For our example, since we want the CoPilot to alarm around peak cavity pressure limits, we should select peak pressure from the variable type list. After selecting peak pressure, the location option is revealed. For our example, we know we want peak cavity pressure near the mold gates, so we can select Post Gate for location. After selecting the location, the cavity options are revealed. For our example, there are two cavities in the mold, and we want the alarm for peak cavity pressure at Post Gate for all cavities, so we can choose Select All to include them both. After selecting Select All, both Cavity 1 and Cavity 2 are highlighted in green. To confirm this selection for our example, we can then select Save at the bottom right of the screen. After selecting Save, a confirmation will appear at the bottom of the screen stating, Alarm settings saved. This change will take effect next cycle. And we can see on the alarm settings screen, under the mold alarm section, peak pressure, Post Gate 1, and peak pressure, Post Gate 2, have been added. For our example, we can see that we currently have machine time alarm limits set for fill time and cycle time. Since a template has previously been selected, template values are automatically displayed for all selected alarms, including the mold alarms that we just added. And notice that the lower limit and upper limit values have previously been set for the machine alarms, but we still need to add limits for peak pressure Post Gate 1 and 2 alarms in the mold alarms section. To add the limits for peak pressure Post Gate 2 for our example, we can select the Edit button at the right end of that alarms row. The two editable fields for lower limit and upper limit now appear. To enter the lower limit, select the white field under lower limit. And we will enter 110 for the lower limit for our example. To enter the upper limit, select the white field under upper limit. And we will enter 150 for the upper limit in our example. To save these limits, select the Save button. We can now see that the peak pressure, Post Gate 2, lower limit, and upper limit are now listed. To complete adding the alarm limits for our example, we need to add the lower limit and upper limit for peak pressure Post Gate 1 by repeating the same steps we did for peak pressure Post Gate 2. First, we should select the Edit button at the right end of that alarms row. The two editable fields for lower limit and upper limit now appear. To enter the lower limit for our example, select the white field under lower limit. And we will again enter 110 for our example lower limit. To enter the upper limit, select the white field under upper limit. And we will also enter 150 for our example upper limit. To save these limits, select the Save button. We can now see that for our example, the alarms for peak pressure Post Gate 2 and peak pressure Post Gate 1 have lower and upper limits saved. If we select the center circle of the screen and drag it to the right, we can enlarge the summary graph to see those peak pressures graphing. Since there are currently no breaches in pressure, either under the lower limits of 110 psi or above the upper limit of 150 psi, we are not seeing any alarm notifications on the graph. To see an example of what an alarm would look like for these pressures, let's edit the alarm settings for peak pressure, Post Gate 2. We can double tap the alarm settings card to make it a bit larger. And select the Edit button at the end of that alarms row. From here, let's select the editable field under lower limit. And type in 135 to adjust that lower limit. And select Save to finalize that adjustment. After saving that change, you can see that the peak pressure, Post Gate 2, is red. To view the summary graph, to see the effect of the alarm change, double-tap the Alarm Settings card to get back to the main screen. At the main screen, you can see the effect of the new lower limit adjustment, not only on the Alarm Settings card, but also in the summary graph and job overview cards. If we double-tap on the summary graph card, we can make it a bit larger and see all the way to the right, at the very bottom, the red alarm indicator, notifying us that the lower limit has started alarming when it goes below 135. If we select that point on the peak pressure, post-gate 2 graphing, we can see that the pressure has indeed dropped below 135 psi to 127.45 psi. If we double-tap on the summary graph card, back at the main screen, the job overview card shows the mold in red due to the new lower limit alarm. Thank you for watching this video regarding the CoPilot, how to set a mold alarm. For further assistance, please refer to the product manual or contact our customer support department at support@rjginc.com or by calling 1-800-472-0566.